We are going to talk about something very interesting. My voice might sound a little bit slow because I'm in someone else's house, but kudos to that. So let's start. We are going to talk about generalizations. You ever see a kid painting a house and you draw a pentagon like this? There's a chimney. I'm always surprised by why they do make the chimney, but whatever. There is the window, two windows, and a door. It's a single door. Now, this isn't how a house actually looks, but it is what is being interpreted by the child that house is. I mean, if a kid does this and shows it to you, you can be, this is not actually a house, is it? But if you read geography, there are certain symbols which operate as the SOPs inside maps. And for house and temples, there are various icons so that when you look at them, you understand that it represents that particular thing. So it's a generalization. Now, why is it such a problem for us? First, before talking about the problem, let's talk about why is it important? Why do we use generalizations? Our world is filled with uncertainties. Let's take the example of the house. There are a million design of a particular house. A two-story building can have many kinds of design. So whenever someone tells you that I have a house, you have to think of, okay, house like what kind of house? Three-story house? Two-story house? What kind of house? But you don't think like that. You think in general terms. You think, okay, he has a house, a place to live in. You make an icon in your brain that is of a house. So without generalizations, our life would be far more complicated. So complicated that our brain wouldn't be able to keep up. Then the question arises, why wouldn't our brain be able to keep up? It has the capability to process a lot of information, but you are forgetting that this is not the only information that the brain has to articulate. In an entire conversation, the word house may only come 2 to 3 times, and there will be various other things that would have more complicated meanings and more complicated terminologies and more complicated structures, which would make it far more overloading to the brain. That's why we develop something called the low resolution thinking. This is a term coined by Jordan Peterson. in which he uses instead of the term generalization. Not exactly, but if you start speaking it in a conversation, you would get away with it. What low resolution perception is that you do not get into the complexities and the intricacies that involve a certain thing, a certain person, or any object in the world or any possibility in the world. You start talking to a person who is new. You are in a networking event. Looking at the person in a low resolution perception. You're not you do not know what his background. You do not know what his childhood looked like. You do not know what kinds of parents does he have, what kind of mentors does he have. Well, you can figure that out with certain questions and looking at certain behaviors. But if you're just talking, you cannot. You have to be trained in order to do that, or you have to do it by an intuition which has to be sharp. Now let's talk about why this is bad. This, although it is advantageous to us since we are humans and our brains can automatically pick out what's necessary, what's not. But when we are talking about the tech industry, the artificial intelligence, neural networks, and how large language model works, there it causes a lot of problems because you realize that words aren't so linear as they might seem. Language isn't so linear, and the reality isn't as linear and as simple as it might seem. I mean, looking at the house, we talked about a lot of things. So there would be a lot of computational power needed to involve those reality together and weave them together to give us an accurate result. There was a research paper which made the concept of attention. It explained the concept of attention vividly. The LLM can figure out which part of the statement or which word should it pay more attention to and which part of the sentence should it give less importance to, less attention to. That's one of the ways that LLMs have decreased their generalizations, but it's not a great solution. We can understand attention by a statement: Mary had a red car. She washed the car, used it with a scrubber. The paint the paint came off. Now, as a human, you can look at this statement and be like, okay, Mary had a car. She washed her car with a scrubber. The paint of her car came off because she washed it with a scrubber. But an LLM won't be able to understand that. It would be like, okay, Mary had a car. She washed it. It, what is it? It doesn't know. That's where attention comes in. Here it could refer to car, it could refer to red, it could even refer to Mary. But the LLM will look at it and figure out that it refers to Mary's car. The paint came off. Whose paint came off? The car's paint came off. That's why attention is important. This is one of the factors that has been solved by LLMs, but it is not the only problem that LLMs have to feel to get in conjunction with the reality that we live in. Even though, even though LLMs do have potential, but the deeper and deeper we get into telling the LLM what to do, deeper and deeper we improve our AI into behaving more human-like, we understand how complex the human mind really is. I was listening to Jordan Peterson today, and he told me a very important concept, a very interesting experiment which you might do. The test for intelligence, let's call it. Suppose, let's say, we take 100 people. We take 100 people. Each make 100 questions. And what kinds of questions? The questions which will, when asked to the general masses, will determine if they are intelligent or not. So 100 people, 100 questions, if they multiply it, it's 10,000 questions. Now, after taking the 10,000 questions, we mix them up randomly and then divide it into batches of 100. So we have random 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, and so on and so forth. And then we give each set to various subjects one by one. And then we look at the results. And it will vary so much depending on the questions that you would question. If the questions that the people asked for intelligence, the questions that these 100 people made, the 10,000 questions, do they actually represent, or can they actually calculate, or can they actually determine a person's intelligence capabilities? No, it doesn't. But one thing which accurately does that is the IQ test. If you perform well in one set of an IQ test, you are likely to perform that well in other sets of IQ tests. It's a given. So IQ is the singular, sustainable, predictable measurement of intelligence. And so if IQ is that good, then why do we believe, why is it that the higher IQ people don't always have a good life? Yes, they're intelligent for sure, but it does not guarantee a good life. There we come a concept of neuroticism. It's hard to even pronounce. Now, most of the people in psychology will tell you that this is a border which consists of all the negative things like pain, disgust, alertness, unsociable behaviors, the adrenaline responses, which do not always translate to good social interactions and good social situations. But you have to understand that neuroticism isn't something you should eliminate from your chart because that's how we were evolved. That's how we assess our risks. Now that leads us back to our topic of generalization, of how it's bad. We were talking about AI and why AI cannot become the perfect artificial intelligence which will replace human in the next 5 to 10 years is because we will look at an autistic person. If you talk to an autistic person, they will tell you that they are not able to generalize these things. They're not able to generalize. What that means is that for them, detailing is the only way. Suppose you are in your bedroom and your bedroom has a tube light. If you move that tube light to another place, then you as a normal person, it would not affect you. But an autistic person, for him or her, it might change his entire worldview because he's so invested in the details. He's so invested in the high resolution perception that it hinders his ability to do anything when it goes out of the order. There is an autistic person, says named something, who designs slaughterhouses for animals. Yes, he does that because he believes he can think like animals. She can see herself as a cow walking down the slaughter aisle, not being able to look at what is happening on the other side because of the walls. She can understand the eye view of the cow. She can understand the intricacies of a cow's brain, how it actually works. And that's how autism works. So we could give AI the ability to work with and the ability to think like an autistic person. But if you think about it, that would require a great amount of details. I mean, greater than what autistic people have. Autistic people have autism in particular areas of their life. Someone would be spiritually autistic, someone would be financially autistic, someone would be autistic to some places. I'm giving you general terms, but inside those general terms, autism refers to very specific things. And if we start integrating it into AI, the attention to detail, the vectors which compile for a large amount of variabilities and possibilities, we would need a lot of GPUs, a lot of computing power, which is in its own sense a silly idea to have because how big of a GPU are you going to make for a simple task? Excuse me. But then another question arises. If we always look at people in low resolution, then what about intuition? Is it preserved experiences or is it something we are evolved with? Then we have to look at if intuition is actually good for us or bad for us. Because in certain cases, intuition might create a certain fear which pulls us away from our specific task and our specific goal. And also, it delegates our mind into more of the negative areas of the outcome rather than the positive ones. This is a very interesting concept also because people tend to make rules about everything that, mm, especially in astrology and philosophy, that if you have this, then you will have this, or if you have this along with this, but with certain position, then you will automatically have this. But this is such a general term. You describe a linear relationship with no account for what could be the things influencing it. I mean, your words might be true, but we can interpret your words in different ways. For example, you say if you have this planet in this house, then you will have shortage on cash flow. What if the cash is already present? And by cash flow, do you mean the liquid cash flow or the investment cash flow? What do you define as cash flow? What if the person has buildings and is renting them out and they're paying him using crypto? Does it account for that? Or maybe they're paying him using cash or they're buying food for him. I mean, I agree that for a debate to be present, we have to agree on a certain set of rules and boundaries, a certain set of meanings, which should be the standard operating procedure. But it's a standard operating procedure for us. The Vedas and the Upanishads, they use metaphors to explain stuff. So you cannot just take them literally or generalize them into a linear formula and to show it to people to market yourself. It's very interesting that how, as humans, we try to think of things very linearly from A to B to C, but things do not always work like that. This A will be merging with various other things. It will have so many variables that you cannot even account for, which will react with it and form B. That everything will be in B will react to everything in A with some additional variabilities, and there will be C. So it's not a linear relationship. You're just putting in abstract ideas and trying to get it into words and equations so that people will understand easily and it can satisfy their pattern like brain, which has a desire for control. The only thing you're doing is marketing yourself. Oh God, that's a lot of scribbling. Okay, I guess that's it for today. I did make videos, some podcasts for you to watch, but I don't know if I can post it on YouTube. So, whatever. Anyways, let's end it here for today. Bye bye.